All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Cameron David. Cameron, welcome. So awesome to have you, man.
Hey, thanks so much, Kevin, for having me.
You
Appreciate it.
bet. And I need to give a shout out to Trent Stonehouse for connecting you and I. If it weren't for Trent, you and I wouldn't even be here right now. And you know, it's so fitting though, because after 2 years of hosting this podcast, now it's almost every time I do an interview and somebody has an experience with that, they're like, Kevin, you need to interview so-and-so for your podcast. And you know, I'll tell you, for a guy who facilitates relationships, who that's my thing, that's my jam, that's what I love doing, that's what inspires me. This podcast has turned into be such an amazing tool and a catalyst for all of that. And so, Trent, I want to give you a shout out for that and appreciate you for connecting Cameron and I. And Cameron, I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you today. And what I'd like to do to start off with is just turn it over to you, so you can share, set some context, share a little bit about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you do. We'll start there and let you set a little bit of context, Cameron.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. So I am the co-founder of a company called Fuel Life Canada.
Okay.
We are a social enterprise, and our tagline is a health companion for all. And why that's important to me is that a health journey in general can be a lonely journey. And so I'll get into it a little bit later of like why my company exists. But to answer your question first about the people that I serve, I have two main kind of populations that I serve. The first population are the busy professionals. These are the people that grind. These are the people that feel very alone in their health journey because of this almost sacrifice of health for success. And it isn't until later that they recognize that, oh my gosh, I have all this money, I have this wealth, but my body is broken. And I'm extremely passionate about helping those people commit to themselves, because the reality is that the commitment to themselves actually has a ripple effect to other people in their lives, their business partners, and everyone. So helping them to acknowledge the impact of them being healthy and what that means for everyone and all the relationships in their life. That's people number one. Okay. People number two is actually individuals who are just retired. They just retired and they've been grinding. They might have been that individual that traded their health for success, and now they want to explore. They want to actually utilize that money that they have built, that nest egg, and they want to experience the world. And often people will go into go mode, but the trouble is that they recognize that now they need to go slow until there's no go. And I'm really passionate about helping people who've just retired to honor themselves and to be proactive about accessing that younger version of themselves so that they can experience life in such a way that's meaningful to them and actually sustain health for longer periods of time. In health policy, it's called the compression morbidity hypothesis, which is like shrinking the years that you are non-functional to such a small degree that you get to experience, like, from the years of 65 until 85, that's 20 years that you get to experience life, for example, or maybe it's till 90, but helping them to access that younger version of themselves and enjoy life. And those are the two populations that light me up, that excite me. And yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Man, it's very interesting. My brother and I, he's not an entrepreneur. He's an engineer. He's been doing that kind of work for years. And we have these different kinds of conversations around what retirement looks like for both of us and stuff. And for me, I get so much joy and so much satisfaction from what I do now, that I would like to continue doing what I do now for as long as I possibly can. I have no desire to stop doing it. I want to continue to become the best version of me that I can become, and just become more and more
Mhm,
effective and just better and better at doing what I do. And
mhm,
my brother, on the other hand, he's done very well for himself financially, him and his wife. In fact, their house is all paid for, and their vehicles are paid
mhm,
for, and all that. And he is getting to the point now where, so I just turned 58. He will be turning 57 in a couple of months,
mhm.
and he is getting to the point where he's looking at retirement, where now he's going to stop working like he has been all these years as an engineer, and looking forward to the point of now, now we're going to get to relax a little bit and stuff. And now I'm not going to be going to work every day, and I'm going to start enjoying life the way I really want to, and all of this. But we have had conversations too about, even though he's done all this preparation and even saved up a lot and all that, he's like, Kev, he's like, I'll never know if I've done enough, to last as long as it needs to last. So yeah, it's very interesting, the conversations that we've had around this topic and stuff. And you sharing what you just did really, really brought that up for me again and stuff. So
Mhm.
I am okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set here on what drives you, Cameron, and what really excites you, I'm really looking forward to digging into the next part of the conversation here. So I'm gonna reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. And so, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Cameron, I'm just like really excited to have you share this part of your story, and just really honor some of these relationships that have had such a profound impact on you and on your life.
Yeah, so there's two. So this I'm going to answer this in two parts.
Okay.
Part one is learning how to be a bit more open.
Okay.
The person that I was introduced to, not necessarily from someone, but I met him when I was going to the gym, just moved to Deep Cove, walk into the community center and look to my right. There's somebody who's volunteering there. He's got a calculus textbook in his hand. And I'm like, oh, I just did calculus like last semester. So that's going to be an interesting point. I have no friends. And so I just moved to this new place. So there we go. I'm going to go and be bold and like try to make a new friend.
Mhm, mhm.
And fast forward, I find out that he's going to the same school as me, and we start to hang out. Over time, this individual, he's quite like adventurous. He's the kind of person who he is quite energetic. He doesn't really think so much when he goes to do things, whereas myself, I'm very cautious and I think a lot about things before I do them, to a fault. And then he also, I just turned 19 at this time. That should add that context.
Okay.
And I really didn't look too fondly around sort of the party culture. And I kind of was very, um, yeah, I kind of looked down on it, honestly. And I didn't see the point.
Okay.
He invited me to some gatherings, and he actually started to introduce certain things that I once believed were kind of pointless. Like we started to have like a beer here and there. I didn't really drink before that. We started to have more adventures spontaneously. And it was never like, stories where generally it has alcohol, it goes into a dark place. This doesn't go into a dark place. He would invite me out to his friend gatherings. I got to meet new people. He was very straightforward. I was kind of like the emotional glue within the conversation. Fast forward again, and we became like really good friends to the point where we were able to go and hang out at different like games rooms, pubs, restaurants, stuff like that. And he would go and kind of strike up the conversation. And then I would just kind of like observe and listen. And then I would ask questions that would kind of move the conversation forward. And so we kind of developed this dynamic duo of funny man Trav and emotionally in touch Cam. And I was kind of the glue to the conversation, and he
Okay.
was kind of like the striker. And it allowed so many different relationships to develop, whether it be with meeting girls, whether it be with just kind of having fun and just enjoying life. And so that's kind of part one, is he changed my perspective on kind of this whole like binary system of introvert extrovert, myself being more introverted. I learned through him, his extroverted nature, that there's a version of me that actually is able to kind of be extroverted, but hidden. And it expanded what I thought, what I saw possible for myself. So that's part one.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. Very
Yeah.
cool. Okay. So what's part two, Cameron?
Part two is the expansion of me trusting more people
Okay.
and not doing everything myself. So part two kind of happened where I was doing a in-person personal training, and I had a client. Her name's Angel Chan.
Okay.
And I was helping her and her husband to be to get healthier before the wedding. And I shared with them a lot of the different mindset tactics that I present to my clients, as well as compassionate ways to exercise and take care of yourself. And through the process, she was quite enamored with my process, that she just kind of loosely said, like, oh, like, what if like we were to like do a meal delivery service, and what if we were able to do things like health retreats, like more people could use this, and like maybe there's a way that we can kind of like work together. And so I just kind of like paused for a moment, because my pattern up until this point was to do everything myself, self-sacrifice, burnout, and then repeat. And it would basically just be this vicious circle where I would take on all the burden, I would go and grind, I would burn out, and then repeat.
Okay.
And so this was the first time that I kind of perceived that, you know what, maybe allowing someone into my vision might actually be the play. And that's exactly what happened. We went on to build what at the time was me just going to people's homes and doing personal training, to developing Fuel Life into something that was beyond myself, and to support more people, and doing it in a way where, similar to how I spoke about Travis, he showcased the extroverted side.
Yep.
Angel taught me about more of the structured corporate side. She is a chartered accountant by training. And so with me kind of bouncing everywhere and like doing things quite loose, she helped me to see kind of the integrity behind building a business, like bookkeeping, accounting, corporate structure, And so it, like, these two relationships were pivotal for very similar reasons as well, is that I allowed myself to truly trust two individuals that I care about deeply, and to this day.
Yeah.
And they actually were a huge reason for me to grow as a human being, because Travis allowed me to recognize that the world was not black and white, and that I actually am capable of being within environments that I once thought I wasn't able, I didn't belong. Angel helped me to understand that I'm not alone, and that I can actually trust other people, and they'll care about what I am doing, and that they've got my back.
Yeah.
And sorry, there's a part three, but it's actually the true part one, I guess.
Okay. All right. We'll continue on.
The true
I mean, Cameron, I'm fascinated by what you're sharing, and it's really hitting home. And I would imagine it's hitting home on a personal level with a lot of other entrepreneurs as well, because this whole topic of trust, this is a big fat hairy deal right here, you know. And I love how it spurred on this conversation, just spurred on something else for you that just came top of mind. So continue on.
Yes. So, I mean, the you know, the precursor to all of this really is actually my mom and dad.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so I lost my dad when I was 5 years old. And this is why I do what I do, is because and a lot of business owners will have an event that occurs that inspires them to do something. And my dad, he inspired me by by him passing, really, and watching my mom struggle while all of this is unfolding. Like, my dad, he was not really a healthy person. He smoked, he drank, and he was kind of an angry person, actually.
Okay.
Um, and it was like one night when he went to go play baseball and got a home run that night. Everything was great. Felt a little sick when he was walking back to the car. And from what I'm told, he kind of just was like, okay, I'm just going to sit down for a moment. We're just going to, then we'll drive. He was driving with his friend Bill. Bill gets in the car. He's in the car. They pull off onto the highway, when all of a sudden it happened. He had his foot go heavy on the gas, and they both started to beeline straight to oncoming traffic.
Wow.
And Bill, in the last moment, pulled the car into the ditch, and then it rolls and it is totaled. But Bill's okay. And my dad had an aortic aneurysm in that moment, which is kind of like a weak spot on the heart. And it all just happened very, very abruptly, suddenly. And it's in that moment where my life changed forever. We lived in Ontario, and my mom said no to going to Alberta for a company deal. And that moment, when my mom now has 2 kids, no spouse, and has to now make a choice whether to stay or to go to this company deal. She chose to go to the company deal, had the expenses paid for, and went to Alberta. And I basically became the guardian for my family, is what I took on. My brother, growing up, I took on that kind of guardian role. And so the reason why I share this as the precursor story is because this notion of me being the guardian and taking on responsibility alone is, I think, the origin story of why I started to lone wolf things all the time. It's like, well, nobody else is going to do it, so therefore I'm going to do it. And I am grateful for my dad to show me that, because it allowed me to be on one extreme to appreciate the other.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have shared the first two relationships with you if I didn't have contrast and appreciation for feeling the need to protect my family.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
additionally, this whole idea where I recognize now that actually how my dad was being, he had a lot of anger, he smoked, he drank, he didn't really take care of himself. And from a very young age, a heart condition was known.
Okay.
I want the message to the world to be that your health matters, and that a health companion for all, my company's slogan, it means something very deep. It's
Yeah.
that you're not alone, and that the proactive nature of taking care of you is important. And similarly, that the ripple effect of you caring for you is probably one of the most selfless things you can do, because your future self will thank you, your kids will thank you, and all of your friends will thank you too, because you will be able to be more present and more able to extract this short period of time we have in life to do the things we want to do. And so that's my third one.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Boy, you know, that really hit home. I lost my dad when I was 16. And so and when you talk about, mom now being in a position with, it was similar with my brother and I. We're both a little older. I was 16, he was 14, but
Yeah.
mom was now the sole income earner for the family, and changes had to be made because of that, and and our lives changed for sure. And a lot of experiences came from that same kind of thing, that were a catalyst for other things that have, I mean, it's a big part of why I'm so motivated and inspired to do what I do now too. Same, just like you, Cameron. And I
Mhm.
think, and this topic of trust that you brought up, it really is. And I'll tell you, there's been, over the last few years with COVID and all that, there's been a big breakdown in trust, like kind of across the board, generally speaking, and
Mhm.
people really are looking for real relationships where they can trust other people, they people, and especially entrepreneurs. And what I have really found is, um, in the experience I've had in doing what I do, because when there's trust in two specific things, and you've kind of alluded to this, when there's trust in character, where we just know who somebody is and we know that they've got our back, and there's also trust in competence, where we just know they're incredibly good at whatever it is that they do. And when those two trusts are in place and present, now all of a sudden what happens is there's zero friction. And when there's zero friction, things just happen, things just flow. It's like easy. It's and fast. You want to talk about fast? I mean, when there's zero friction, stuff happens like now. And
Mhm.
that's the beautiful thing about trust. And when we find people that we have that trust in both character and competence, it's just amazing what can happen and stuff. And so I'm curious, if we look at any of these relations, you've talked about your mom and dad, you've talked about Angel, you've talked about Travis. If you look back at any of these relationships, and I want you, I mean, I'm sure you could come up with a lot of examples, but if you look back on these relationships over the years, and where, as a result of these relationships, what is an instance where you were able to have a really big impact, and that it would have hands down never happened if not for your relationship with so and so, whoever that was? What is an experience that comes to mind for you when I ask you that, Cameron?
Well, it would be the angel one with
Okay.
like fuel life wouldn't exist without that relationship.
Okay.
Um, it just wouldn't, it wouldn't exist
Okay.
because
So
yeah,
yeah, so go into a little bit of detail. How did Fuel Life come to be then, as a result of your relationship with Angel?
sure. So how it came to be was having someone to bounce ideas off of, having someone who knew something that I didn't know that I didn't know, filling in gaps and adding the competency that might have been missing,
Uh-huh. Mhm.
and as well just like someone to see, like, believe the vision of what I'm saying, that it's important and saw value in it. Um, it yeah, um, yeah.
That's really powerful. That's really powerful, Cameron.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, I've had many people in my life that saw things in me that I couldn't see for myself,
Yeah.
and pointed those things out to me, and even championed those things, and
Mhm.
and gave me the confidence that I might not have had previously, that like, you know what, man, they're right. I really am good at this. I really do like doing this. And it has made all the difference in the world. So I can tell you, I would not be doing what I do today if not for those people around me who, like I said, who believed in me and saw in me some of the things that I couldn't see myself. Because I don't know about you, Cameron, but man, I can tend to be my own worst critic sometimes. And
Totally.
so those kind of relationships are incredibly valuable and stuff. And so,
Mhm.
well, Cameron, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. And the goal for this podcast has always been, it's kind of twofold. I want to give the people that I get to interview the opportunity to just really honor some of these relationships that have had such a profound impact on your life and on your business, and also for the listeners. My intention has always been to inspire our listeners who are also entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own life. And we've definitely achieved that here today, thanks to you. And so I just want to ask now that people are like, Kevin, man, I really like Cameron. I like what he stands for. I like the way he shows up. How can they find out more information about you guys and what you guys are doing, Cameron?
Sure. So you can check out our website, fuellife.ca. As
Okay.
well, I want to invite anyone who's listening to go on to Instagram and type in fuellife.ca. That's the handle. And to send me a DM with what resonated with you from this specific conversation. And I'd love to, if I can be of value to you, I'm happy to do that. Not from like a sales context. I genuinely mean, like, if there's something I said that resonated with you and you want someone to talk to, I'm here for you. That's what I want them to know.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, and Cameron, your authenticity just comes through loud and clear. And so I just want to, acknowledge that. Uh, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
I'd like to share one thing
Okay.
around relationships. It's something that I learned from a dear friend. Her name's Ashley Aoki. And she I believe she was sharing something with me around the concept of caring for ourselves.
Okay.
And she framed it really well, where in every single interaction that you have, there are three people involved. There's me, there's you, and then there's us. And there's always a constant, give and take between all three of those people. Now, there are some people who might be more on the people-pleasing side, and so they'll forget themselves to take care of them.
Mhm.
But we sometimes forget that there is a dynamic of you plus them, or me plus you, however you want to think about it. And so I'd love to just offer that as a way to ground yourself. If you're ever wondering, me as a people pleaser, it's something I use to ground myself. And I ask myself, what do I need? What do they need? And then what do we need?
Yeah.
If you can answer that question, you can truly take care of that relationship, which involves those three people.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you give everything of yourself to care for others and you leave yourself behind, there's nothing left for them to connect with.
That's right.
And so therefore it hurts them. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, anyway, that's
Yeah.
what I want to leave with people.
Yeah. Well, and I really appreciate that, Cameron. For a lot of my life, I was that way. I was that people pleaser kind of guy. And I just, many entrepreneurs would consider themselves very giving and very generous people. But yet when it comes to being able to receive and even proactively ask others for what they need. You know, many, in fact, a very high percentage of entrepreneurs would say, yeah, you know, I'm not so good in that area.
Mm,
And I know I have been actively working at expanding my receiving muscle for 11 years now. And
yep.
we've come a long ways. And I will tell you, you know, that by receiving more, it also in turn allows us to give more.
Yes.
And you know, and by continually expanding our receiving muscle, we find that like, wow, you know, our ability to be able to receive is far bigger than we ever really thought possible, which, like I said, just allows us to be able to give even more as well and stuff. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Cameron. There's a lot there. And
Mm.
thanks so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I am just really excited to get this out and share it with other entrepreneurs. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for listening.
absolutely.